Hi everybody and welcome to another piano comparison video here on the Merriam Pianos YouTube channel. Today we're going to be comparing Roland's HP702 and Casio's AP710. Because of recent pricing changes on both sides of the board, these two instruments are now literally the same price. And so it begs the question, why not do a comparison of them? They're very different instruments, quite a few points of comparison we're going to walk through. Thank you so much for joining us for today's video. If it's the first time that you're seeing us here on YouTube and you enjoy what you see, you like what you see, and you'd like to come back for more, please hit that subscribe and the notification bell. It really helps us out here at the channel, and you'll get more piano in your life. What could be better? Without further ado, let's dive right into the comparison of the HP702 and the AP710 right away. So the comparison we're doing today really wouldn't have been that appropriate had we tackled it, say, a year ago or even 18 months ago. And that's because the Roland HP702 wasn't the same price, and the gap was actually pretty significant compared to that of the Casio AP710. The AP710 was always a little bit more expensive than where the Roland HP702 was. Let's start over here with the Roland HP702. Now, the 702 uses some of Roland's more recent technology. It is using one of their versions of the piano modeling engine. And piano modeling, for people who don't know, is essentially a technology which synthesizes all of the aspects of the piano sound in real time. So this is a computer that's taking every aspect of what you're doing, the other notes that you're playing, how you've engaged the pedal, the various pedals, the way in which you release the note, obviously velocity, and then a whole multitude of preferences like the duplex scale and hammer noise, damper resonance, right across the board. It's well over 20 parameters that you actually have the ability to modify and control. And everything is synthesized in real time, so there's no sample. And that's the really big distinction, because for the vast majority of digital pianos, the core of the piano tone is still a sample, or in another way of saying it, a recording of a real piano. So the HP702 uses this technology, as does the 704, several of Roland's portable instruments, and of course their entire LX line also has this modeling. And it really started with the V piano, which goes back well over 10 years. This was kind of the breakthrough technology that was really the first outboard hardware that was doing piano modeling. They have it on the software side. Roland doesn't, but a piano company called Mudart with their Piano Tech series does modeling as well, but that's within a computer. So it's using this engine, and it's got several different acoustic models in it. This is the concert piano that you're hearing right now, but there's also ballad piano, mellow piano, bright piano, and then we get into the E pianos, the strings, others, And if you're accessing this through the app, you actually have full access to the General MIDI 2 sound bank, which is well over 300 sounds. But the focus of this instrument really is told by the categories that they give you right on the user interface, which is piano, e-piano, strings, and then it says other, which gets into many of those other sounds. And you can actually access the General MIDI 2 even from that other, although it's not particularly convenient because it's in one category. So definitely recommend using the phone for that. The instrument is equipped with 2 speakers, and both those speakers are facing down. However, there are some gaps in the cabinet which allow you to hear the rear face of that speaker. So you do get a little bit of better treble expression out of the front of the instrument rather than the old school digital piano way of just putting speakers facing down underneath the main body of the piano. Let's now flip over to the Casio, and this is where things start to get very different. Now the Casio is not a modeling, although it does have some synthesized elements to the sound, and they usually refer to these as the resonance engines. So this uses 3 large sample sets. It's got a big tag on the front that says developed in collaboration with C. Bechstein. This is misleading, is not exactly fair because there is collaboration with Bechstein on this model, but it's the same tag as they put on the GP310 and the 510, which has significantly more collaboration with C. Bechstein than this particular model does. So it would be nice to maybe have some type of differentiation between this and the GP series, because the GP series has a really intelligently designed action which properly simulates a grand feel at a much lower cost than what you get out of, say, a Kawai Novus 10 or getting into like the Yamaha Avant Grand or anything like that. So this action has nothing to do with Bechstein. The collaboration is around its main sample set of C. Bechstein C282 Concert Grand Piano. But these are samples compared to Roland's modeling. And they also have Hall Simulator. They have several other resonance simulators like damper resonance, string resonance, and a number of those other ones. They also have 6 speakers and quite a bit more wattage. So there's 60 watts of power versus, I believe, 32 over on the HP702. So even though it's not a linear comparison or a relationship between wattage and output power, the fact is that there's not going to be too many scenarios where having a doubling of the wattage on an amplifier isn't going to present quite a bit more oomph out of the instrument. And the fact that you've got 3 speakers, or sorry, 3 speakers per side, 6 speakers total, to me suggests that we're going to get much better treble presentation out of the front of this instrument. So let's hear it. We're now on Berlin Grand, so we're playing that Bechstein. So the clarity out of this instrument compared to the 702 is pretty immediate. You for sure have more direct and more clear presentation of the treble and the upper mids on this piano. So you've got some tweeters that are coming out of the front here. you've got speakers up at the top, and then you've got your main speakers underneath. The various Hall simulators are directly on the interface. You don't have to go into any level of menu manipulation because there's so many buttons on here. This is the room hall simulator, the salon hall simulator. So these are all just different spatial simulations. French Cathedral. How very grand. So we'll go back to standard hall. So that's the Berlin piano, and there's 3 variations on each sample set. Now, this doesn't mean that there's been 3 separate recordings. To my ear, these are just 3 kind of EQ and compression settings that it applies to the existing sample set. So the Berlin Grand is there. We can go into Berlin Grand Mellow. Yeah, and probably some touch curve as well. So that's bright. Again, still all with that Berlin Grand. And they have really captured the Bechstein sound quite well, which is not a sound that makes its way into digital pianos very often. Be nice if it did. Then we get over to Hamburg, which of course is modeled after the Hamburg Steinway. And then Vienna Grand, which is of course the Bösendorfer. So let's compare what's happening with the various sounds on here. There is a greater variety in the behavior and the character of the piano tones that you can get on the Casio. This isn't specifically because they're using sample technology versus modeling technology, but it just so happens that they have sampled 3 instruments with very distinct characters. And it's presented here in a way that brings out a lot of those unique characteristics. The speakers and how they're reaching your ear on the Casio gives a very detailed presentation. Almost to the point where I might get in there and try and find a way to just back off maybe some of the highs Now, the easiest way to do that, of course, is to actually just close this top lid, and that's what Casio is hoping that you'll use, is actually a physical barrier to limit some of that high treble exposure if it's too much for your ear. So it's an interesting concept, it's an interesting effect that they're going for to use that physical barrier. The Roland, by comparison, gives a more ambient sound. It's a slightly warmer and a slightly deeper tone on the Roland. But there is some high-end detail that you certainly miss by not having those front-facing tweeters like the Casio does. And while you can get the level of character that you want out of the Roland, it requires a lot of manual tweaking, whereas straight out of the box, you've got these three pianos that you can choose from. Now, I should say that with Roland, as you move up the line into, say, the LX, you do get a more substantial difference in the type of piano tone, and they also have piano stage, which is a great set of presets which can drive the variety even wider. But on this HP702, that's not really available or super easy to access. You'd have to get into Piano Designer, which is an external app which will help you to achieve that a little bit faster than using the onboard controls of the Roland. But out of the box, we've got this greater variety of piano tone, and definitely the speakers are giving you more detail. So let's move on to action. Both of these instruments have a triple sensor. They both feel very accurate and very responsive, but the physical feel of the key between these two certainly has some differences. The Casio's key is weighted exactly at 55 grams, both in terms of its dynamic and its static weight. Now, what's the difference between dynamic and static weight when we're talking about key action? Well, the static weight is the weight actually required to get the key in motion. The dynamic resistance is how much weight is required to keep the key in motion. And there are varying schools of thought on whether there should be a slightly higher static weight versus dynamic weight. A slightly higher static weight can help give a sense of control in the key, because the key doesn't move with unintended gestures from the fingers as easily. But of course, once there's even just a little bit of pressure on the key, there is not a heaviness to the key once it's in motion. There is absolutely no difference between the dynamic and static weight on the Casio, and it weighs out exactly at 55 grams, which is pretty well right down the middle of what you might expect. We actually got ourselves a set of weights. This was something that we had been suggested to us by a number of our viewers. We thought it was a great idea as well, so we'll just quickly show you the exact 55 gram weight that you get. So here we are, and it just sets the key nicely in motion. Now, this is a scale design, so as we get lower, you're going to see that fewer and fewer of these keys actually start to move, and it's something in the neighborhood of about 65 grams in the bass by the time we get down there on the Casio. Now, on the Roland with the PHA-4, their current version of the PHA-4 has a static weight of about 65 grams, but the dynamic weight is also in about the 55 gram range. So if we bring it up to 65 grams, oh, there we go. Most of the keys are getting in motion. Right at about the 65 gram range. But once they're in motion, 55 will actually keep the key going all the way down. So that's a major difference between those two actions. This is going to feel, certainly it's going to have a bit of a lighter feel. but it can also give the impression of a slightly shallower key bed, I find, is the effect that that can have on your mind. There's no escapement on the Casio, or certainly none that I can detect. Again on the Roland. You've got the escapement as well on the PHA4. So with the Roland, there's a few different factors which are giving a slightly deeper, meatier feel to the action. You get the impression it's got a slightly deeper travel distance on the key, and there's a sense that you can give the action more intensity. So much of an action and what you feel on an action is psychological, and it's a combination of how you're hearing it. But those are some observations between these two actions. The texture on the Casio is a little more exaggerated with its ivory, although I certainly enjoy it. There is faux ebony texture as well. On the Roland, you've got more of a matte finish on the black key, but you do have that faux texture on the white key that you get pretty well on every instrument equipped with the PHA4 action. For whatever reason, I found that my grip or control on the black keys on the Roland was slightly better than the Casio, but that's probably because I'm a little more used to playing on the Roland, because of course I play a lot of Roland product on my personal side. I just found that it's been a really good fit for me in terms of my gigging machinery. But that's just one last observation for you. We're going to be back with one final section. We're going to compare the features on these two instruments. Thank you so much for being with us so far. So there's a pretty big difference in features between these two pianos. One of the most obvious ones is that the Roland HP702 is equipped with Bluetooth technology, which allows you to stream Bluetooth audio as well as bidirectional Bluetooth MIDI. The audio, you can only push audio to the instrument. You can't get Bluetooth audio out, for people wondering about Bluetooth headphones. And Bluetooth MIDI, you get this nice bidirectional MIDI connection to a mobile device or your computer. That's also what's going to allow you to connect to several of the Roland apps like Piano Every Day. I believe Piano Designer is compatible with this, as well as a whole host of other apps such as GarageBand or some of the learning apps, Scoob, Flowkey, you name it. They'll all wirelessly connect to the Roland. Over on the Casio side, there is no Bluetooth, either Bluetooth MIDI or Bluetooth audio. You can get MIDI to a mobile device if you buy the right cable. This is a special USB cable that you're actually going to require. It's kind of a weird one. It goes from what you might think of as the printer end of a USB cable to, if you're using iOS, it's actually the end that goes into your phone. So this is not the usual USB cable. This one requires a special order, but if you do this, you can get USB to a mobile device through the Casio. So we've got the connectivity differences. They both have 1/4 inch discrete left and right outs, which is great if you want to do some recording with some sort of an external device. Even with the wired connection, there is no app from Casio that actually currently interfaces with the 710. You cannot use the Cordana app with it, and I think the rationale is that virtually all of the editing that the Cordana would have given you, they've decided to put into the user interface. So you can access all the hall simulators, all the various editing functions with this without the need to go to an external app. I'm guessing that that's the reason why they never enabled that. Further, instead of allowing some sort of an external Bluetooth device to push audio here, they have given you inputs, 1/4 inch inputs, so that if you wanted to run some other device and make use of this speaker system, you're going to be able to do that. I have no idea whether they're using active or passive crossovers for this between the 3 speakers, but certainly the way that they've got it calibrated for the acoustic piano, I would imagine it's also going to sound pretty good if you were to push some other external audio sources through those speakers. They also both have all of the standard features that you would expect: transpose, metronome, the ability to split the keyboard into two, the ability to layer two instruments on top of one another. But let's get to our final conclusions here, because this is why these two instruments would be pretty difficult to try and split or compare, because they're not apples to apples. The only apples to apples part of this is the price, which is why I think it always makes sense to do a comparison. Because these two companies are essentially saying, we believe that these instruments, even though they're of different configurations, are of the same value as kind of an overall calculation. With the Casio, you have a much beefier, better configured onboard set of speakers. And so if you were intending on using this instrument almost exclusively for the playing of acoustic piano music or sound, and you were not going to be using headphones a whole heck of a lot, the Casio AP710 is one of those dark horse instruments that doesn't get a ton of attention in this price range, but probably should, because it's a really good playing experience. The action feels good. You've got your triple sensor on there. I suspect that's going to give pretty accurate MIDI information if you wanted to be doing any triggering with another VST. But this is really all about these three sample sets and a great six-way speaker system. That if you were to look at just that aspect on the Roland side, you'd have to go all the way up to a Roland LX706 to be able to get that, which is like twice the price. On the Roland side, you've got an instrument with a much more modern and well-rounded set of additional features. The number of sounds you can access is much bigger. The Bluetooth connectivity could be a very nice thing for people depending on the apps that you want to be using it with or integrating with. The ability to edit the sound is much more substantial than on the Casio side, if that's something that you really enjoy doing. And particularly if this is going to be used with a better balance of both headphones and no headphones, the HP702 has a lot to offer, because I would say the major weak point with the 702 really is the speaker system, at least when you're comparing it to something like the AP710. I hope this comparison has been helpful. Both of these instruments are still very much current products in the marketplace. And so anybody looking in that $3,000, $2,500 to $3,000 price range, depending on what region and country you're in, these two may very well wind up on your list. So I trust, or I hope, that this has been a useful comparison for you. I could definitely see comparing this to a Kawai CN39, because that type of balance between features and speaker performance and action is kind of more aligned to Kawai's philosophy with that model versus Roland. So maybe that's one that you'll see us do in the near future as well. If this is the first time that you are seeing us here on the channel, we would really appreciate if you hit that subscribe and the notification bell so that you'll know every time we come out with a new video. We would love to see you, and it really helps us out when you come in, comment, and help this channel continue to grow. It is so amazing to see what is happening. My name is Stu Harrison. This has been Merriam Pianos on YouTube, and we'll see you again soon.